Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Whiskey Cove. And on today's episode, we have 7 fantastic bourbons that I recommend using for the perfect cocktail. Run the video. All right then, folks, thank you for joining us for another new and exciting episode here on the Whiskey Cove, where we will be looking at 7 bourbons that I think make the perfect bourbon for a great cocktail. Whether that's an old-fashioned, a whiskey sour, a bourbon smash, these bourbons really stand up and make a great cocktail a fantastic or excellent cocktail. So we'll run through a couple of them. I'll tell you why I like them in a cocktail, and then we'll let you decide if I missed any or maybe what you like to put in a cocktail at home instead. And with that being said, bottle number 1 is going to be a newer bottle, and that is Old Grandad 7 Year. So this is Old Grandad 7 Year. It is a bottled in bond, 50% ABV or 100 proof. Old Grandad has multiple different bottles in their range. They have the Old Grandad 114 representing the proof. They have the 86 proof, and then they also have a bonded version as well, and that came before the 7-year age statement. And then they also have the one you see over my shoulder here, Old Grandad 16 to 16-year age statement. But we went with the Old Grandad 7. This is similar to the Old Grandad Bonded, so if you can't get this, then get that. The Old Grandad Bonded is fantastic in a cocktail as well. Easily could have made this list. However, I wanted to have this on there because that 7-year age statement just kind of pushes it to another level in a cocktail. What I'm thinking about for a whiskey to use in a cocktail is that I don't want it to get lost. I want to taste the whiskey, but I also want to taste some of the fantastic quality of the whiskey, and that shine through in a cocktail. What I really like about this is it does have the beam palate, so you are expected to get more woody notes, maybe a touch of peanut, a lot of bacon spices. But with the 7-year age statement, much like the new Jim Beam 7 Black Year, you do get a really nice oaky note in there too. And the first time I tried this, I really enjoyed it neat. But I thought to myself, this would make a perfect cocktail. And that's exactly what I did. I made a whiskey sour, I made an old fashioned, and wow, what a fantastic bourbon to put in a cocktail. It's not too expensive. It's more expensive than the bonded. So again, live within your budget. The bonded is around $20, and I think I picked this up right around $40 or so. Is the extra money worth the age statement? I think that's a completely different video on its own when we do a review on this. But if you can afford a little extra budget, then go for this. If not, the Old Grandad Bonded works perfectly. Next up on this list, and I went in a slightly different direction here, and that is because I selected Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. It doesn't matter what barrel proof version you go for, although some are better than others, some have a higher age statement than others, but what they do give you is a nice cherry sweet punch in a cocktail. Now, if you're talking about some of these whiskeys that you still taste some of the flavor in a cocktail, you'll still taste some of the alcohol with this too. Most Elijah Craig barrel proofs are going to be coming in around 60% ABV or 120 proof. That just varies on the different barrel proofs that you're able to get. This is an older one. This is the C920, so this is 66.4% ABV or 132.8 proof. One of the highest barrel proof versions of recent times. I should say recent times, it's like 6 years ago, close to when they brought this out. But I really like how the whiskey shines through. And I'm not talking kind of like the alcohol punch. I'm talking about you really get a little bit more of a burn that comes from the flavor and the wood there too. So this is a 12-year age statement. It has the higher ABV and it kicks on a cocktail to another level. Yes, it does well at balancing out some of the flavors in a cocktail, and that cherry note definitely shines through in an old-fashioned. But if you're someone who really likes to drink barrel-proof whiskey neat, then I think you need to amp it up a little bit in a cocktail. And I think Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is the perfect bourbon for that. Next up, and we went with one of the classics here down in the Whiskey Cove. If I'm going to make a cocktail, I don't really want to, and I don't really want to think too much about the whiskey that I'm putting into it. But I know that if I put it in, it's going to do a great job. It's not going to break the bank too. I'm going to reach for this bourbon all day long. Of course, Evan Williams Bottled in Bond. Bottled in Bond, 50% ABV, 100 proof. This is known as the Evan Williams White Label. This is a fantastic bourbon. I love this for cocktails, mainly because it makes a perfect cocktail, but also the value that you get from it. Oftentimes, some people will put whiskey that maybe they don't particularly like into a cocktail, just because they're trying to get rid of it, and some of those flavors can get washed out in the cocktail. However, with this, it's very candy forward, very strawberry and berry forward. It has like more of like a ice and sugar sweetness to it. It does have a decent amount of oak there, but the best part is that you're going to be picking one of these up for just under $20 for a regular size bottle. Every now and again, they sell these at Sam's Club, at Costco. You can pick up one of these handles for like $30, which is insane value for money, and sometimes even less than that. It's really one of my go-tos here for a cocktail. And even neat too, it's very enjoyable. If you're someone who doesn't like spicy whiskey or doesn't like too much of a burn from whiskey, and you want to start with cheaper whiskey, I really think this also has a fantastic place for that. And again, it's not going to break the bank. One of the favorites here down in the Whiskey Cove for cocktail making. As you can see, we have a big bottle, and we're going to need to get a new one soon because we'll definitely use it. Next up, we are going with 1792 bottled in bond. There might be a little bit of a theme running here. We're talking about a lot of bottled in bond whiskies. Maybe you're asking the question, why is that? I really personally believe that the best cocktails are made with whiskey that is generally around 50% ABV or 100 proof. Yes, there might be a few exceptions here, but there's specific reasons why I use higher proof bourbons. Maybe if it's a sweeter cocktail that needs a little bit more of that alcohol to cut through some of the sweeter flavors, and that's why I've included some of those on this list. But why I've included 1792 is it has a more of a spice palette on it. It has more of those bacon spices, more cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. And those flavors, for whatever reason with this bottle, shine through in a cocktail. So if I'm having a whiskey sour, where traditionally it's not a spicy cocktail at all, it's quite sweet and lemon forward, this brings a different dynamic. It brings some of those spicy notes into the cocktail, and it really does a great job of balancing it out as well. So you get this really enjoyable cocktail as it is already with something like an Evan Williams white label. But when you use this, you bring on that other level of flavor. Again, it depends on what kind of mood I'm in. If I don't really want to think about it, I don't want to spend much money, I'll use the Evan Williams. If I want more oak, I'll use the Old Grandad, more proof Elijah Craig. If I want some more spice in the palate, I'll use the 1792 bonded, because it just brings that extra layer to it as well, and has a really great profile. Some Italian cream notes, very sweet on the palate, but that spice helps balance it all out, and that's why it's perfect in a cocktail. Next up, we went with a slightly different direction here, and that is because we went with Still Austin Cask Strength. So interestingly enough, this bottle on its own, I like this bottle, but I wouldn't say it's a favorite or anything. But then I used it in a cocktail, and I was blown away. Yes, again, the ABV is a little higher on this one. We're going with a 59% ABV or 118 proof. So it's not gonna blow your palate in a cocktail. But what I really like about this, it has a very distinctive, spicy mesquite note that you seem to only get from Texas whiskey. There must be something in the air down there, or the heat that kind of ages the whiskey and sucks it up into the barrels and spits it out much more than maybe somewhere like with the humidity of Kentucky. It's maybe that dry heat. A lot of Texas distilleries use a pot still method, which brings on more spiciness in the palate. I'm not Still Austin, I don't believe they don't. I believe they have the column still. However, you do get some more of that kind of Texas heat that shines through with that spicy note. So if I want a cocktail that's ever so slightly different to maybe a typical bourbon, I'll reach for this. And again, with the ABV, with the proof, it shines through in a sweeter cocktail or something like an old-fashioned. This in like a cherry old-fashioned with heaps of like maraschino cherries and cherry syrup. The spicy notes and the heat from this really cut through those sweet notes. You should definitely give it a try. Price on this, you're probably looking around the $50 mark. And again, it's more of a craft whiskey, although you don't get any like the craft funk from it. It's excellent in a cocktail. I can't speak enough about it. If I was gonna advise to buy it to drink neat, maybe it's a bottle just is fun to have around, but it shines in a cocktail. Next up, we have almost another piece of the furniture down here in the Whiskey Cove. I've talked about this bottle so many times, and that is Old Forester 100. Old Forester 100, 100 proof, 50% ABV as the name would suggest. This is just much like the Evan Williams. It's cheap, it's cheerful. If I'm not gonna have the Evan Williams light label and I want something that is just gonna make a good and great cocktail, I'm gonna go for the Old Forester 100. It's a little sweeter than the Evan Williams. It doesn't have as much oak. So if I'm looking to add a little bit more of a sweet punch to my cocktail without losing any of the flavor and add more wood characteristics, this is a great option for it. You can pick these up in Colorado time and time again for about $22, $23. And that's in most places in Colorado. I've started doing a lot of shorts on the channel as I'm going out there whiskey hunting, so you folks can see firsthand what we find in Colorado. I have friends who come over from other states who say we are quite spoiled in our whiskey selection here, and also the prices there as well. But for like sub $25, this is an excellent bottle of whiskey. It adds so much character to a cocktail, and you don't lose any of the fantastic notes that makes Old Forester 100 the great bourbon that it is. And then lastly, I picked this bottle of whiskey because it kind of ties all the elements that we've talked about already together. So if I'm not really sure what I want, but I know I want a good whiskey, I'll reach for this one. And that is going to be Wild Turkey Rare Breed. So how does it tie some of the elements of the bottles that we've already talked about in? It has a bit of a spicy profile to it as well, the bacon spices of the bottled and bond, and it also has the ABV of the Still Austin cask strength of the Elijah Craig bourbon. It also has the oaky notes you'd get from the old Grandad 7. Price on this, $50 to $60, I think is a fair price point to pay for this. But many whiskey aficionados who might be watching will tell you this is just a fantastic bourbon to drink neat. And it's also a fantastic bourbon to put into a cocktail. ABV is coming in at 58.4% ABV or 116.8 proof. So again, you're getting that alcohol punch. So when you're drinking a cocktail, you know you're drinking a good proofed bourbon in that cocktail. It's not going to break the bank, but maybe the amount of money you kind of just want to keep it as a nice sipper. But sometimes, every now and again, you want to splurge a little bit. Maybe it's a Friday night, maybe it's been a tough week, or maybe you just want to make a cocktail to show off a little bit. Wild Turkey Rare Breed is going to be my pick for that. So there you have it, folks. 7 excellent bourbons in their own right, but just make a cocktail the next level. Whether you want something cheap like an Evan Williams, which has no frills but makes a great cocktail, you want the heat of Texas with a Still Austin cask strength, or you want the spiciness, the absolute gorgeous oak notes and the punch that comes from the Rare Breed, you're going to choose the Wild Turkey instead. Let me know down in the comments, what are some whiskeys that you like to use for when you're making cocktails and when you're having people around. These are just 7 that I handpicked, but as you can see, I could have chose a lot more. As we say on this channel, as we drink through the world's whiskeys one glass at a time. Cheers.